Hi everybody, welcome back to the painting channel. Today I've got a lovely little sunset for you in oil, so let's roll that intro. Let's see how we get on. Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. Now, as I said just now, I'm going to be doing a little sunset for you this evening. Now, it is only a small panel, and it's because I had quite a bit of paint that was starting to get to a point where I really thought about changing that paint for fresh paint and scraping off the palette. But instead of just wasting very good paint, it's nice to maybe use it, have a practice at something, play around with an idea, or do a little painting, which is what I'm doing this evening. So without further ado, let's get on. Let's see how this little sunset works out. Okay everybody, before we get underway, the canvas panel that I'm using is a wrap round board. Now this is canvas that is glued over cardboard and then another piece of paper added on the back to give it a really nice finish. It's been pre-colored in a warm toned gesso so that I've got a lovely mid-tone to work on. Okay, so I'm using up all these old colors. Lots of my blues, Ultramarine Blue, Cobalt Blue. I'm using a bit of Magenta. I'm also tapping in a bit of the yellow red to make a dirty corrupted violet. I'm using a small brush and a bit of King's Blue Deep going in, and a little bit of the lovely Indian red, which is a very cool earthy color. But you can see how corrupted that purple has got. It's become almost a gray, but it really for me works very well, adding lightning and just different values across the whole of the scene. I've gone in and I'm making some reds now, some deeper reds to start with. Going to draw in where I want my sun, and I'm going to leave that and go in with that later on. But now I'm adding in some hotter colors around the corona of that sun. Some yellows, some lemon yellows, some oranges, just trying to make the impact closest to that sun as fiery as I possibly can. And it really does work very well. You just make those little transitions from yellow, bright yellow, through to some of the oranges and further on into the reds again, and that all emanates from what you're going to put in it as a very lemony white color for the heart of the sun. So all I'm doing is just playing around and adding these little color notes and building up my scene. I'm not working for reference, I just enjoying working from my head, and I think that's part of the experiment of practice and having fun moving forward. Okay, so now we're going to start mixing up for the sky, or the main part of the sky. I found a lovely little pile of Phithalo Blue left on my palette, and that was just what I wanted to do this color with. Now, the Phithalo Blue, like its counterpart, the Phithalo Green, is extremely powerful as a color. It's a transparent. It goes an awful long way. Now as I bring it across the sky, you can see I'm adding more white pigment to it to make it paler, which is probably more representative of the extreme light in the sky at that point. The further away the sun you go, the darker that blue becomes. Added to some cobalt sometimes, it makes a really great summer sky. So I've always got it around on my palette, and it is one that I will sort of probably always keep hanging around somewhere. Not always use it, but it's there when I want it to. But now what I'm doing is I'm adding some lemon yellow to that. It's going to transform the color, and it's going to make it even more exciting. Very, very powerful as a value or color note in the sky. As it comes down, it becomes much more paler, and I'm adding more and more white to that mix. Now it does on its own look quite green. The yellow and the blue, of course, are going to make green. But when you put that right next door to all those reds and oranges, it doesn't look that green at all. But what it really does do, it starts exciting those other colors. And as I bring it right the way down to that cloud base at the bottom there, I'm making it even more pale. More yellowish maybe, but it does really, really work and sets up the scene. Okay, so now on those clouds at the bottom, I wanted to put a bit of light catching the edges and the lead edges of those clouds, a bit of a corona. What I chose to do was to put some lemon yellow on the tip of the brush or on the edge of the brush quite thickly and let it come off the side of the brush, leaving a bit of a ridge, but it is almost pure color. And that really works well. It gives you that sense of light touching those clouds. And I'm going to work that all the way through that area so that you get little senses of light on extra clouds, and you can actually build other layers of clouds that are almost oranges and what have you by putting this little bit of extra color in there, and it suggests that they are hot colors, but there are clouds that are formed within those, and that little bit of lead light really does help suggest that, even to the point of putting that red right the way through or up to where the sun's going to be and putting that yellow right along the lead edge of it. It just defines some of the shapes that you're using in that immediate area. So now I've pretty much finished off that part of the sky, and I really like the way it's looking. So I'm turning my attention back to those blue areas of the cloud above. I've gone back in with some King's Blue Deep and some magenta, a little bit of orange color and a bit of red color to alter the purity of the violet at different places. So I've got a fairly even color, but I can dive into that and mix down to any other shade or temperature that I really want to. Okay, so I'm going back in now. I'm still using that little brush that I was using right at the start. It's perfect for this because I can put some lovely little twists and turns, little marks, little paint marks that are very, very expressive, and you can get quite small with some of them and get some really intriguing little details. Now the cloud is going to change. It's going to add more violets to it, dirty purples, reddish purples, bit more blue here, and a little bit more corrupted violet there. I'm just trying in my head to visualize what I think these clouds should look like. Now I've painted pictures like this tons and tons of times, so it's not a problem to just create a cloud and let it morph, let it organically grow. You can picture them in your head all the time. You see enough of them, you can just work that idea, and when it looks about right, stop. And if you want to add more details or a different color value, color note in there, do so. I'm adding a little bit of orange in there, just warming up now the very bottom of these clouds, and I'm going to continue to develop them as we go forward in this little painting. I've just been adding some of these lovely red and hot fiery colors in the same way as I was doing the violets, but now I'm turning my attention to that little sun. Quite lemony and very, very pale. Lots of white in there and quite a thick amount of color. Now I don't mean that I want to leave great big caverns that you've got to throw a rope over to climb over that little spot, but I want it quite thick. I want it to stand up and stand out. And that's why I've used a yellow in the form of lemon to really tint that white and make it look very, very powerful. And it was Turner, I believe, who taught us that adding that little bit of white, that little bit of yellow to our white really does work on the brain and on the senses when we look at it. Now I'm turning my attention to some darks. I'm using some of my umbers, some of my Indian reds, and some of these older earth colors, even a little bit of sienna coming into the mix there, because I just want to get a dark grungy color with very little in it to start suggesting the base layer of all the foreground. Now there's going to be a bit of light in it, but not very much. The whole of this painting stands and falls on that sky beyond. So everything I put here now is merely a support act to that sky. Oh, so often when you're looking into the sun like this, when it's setting, you've got all this very, very dark foreground. And indeed, cameras can't make that distinction, and it comes out almost black on a camera photograph. But when you're standing there and you're doing this maybe plein air, then you can see into that ground. You can see subtle changes in the landscape, the topography and the identifying features within it. And I always feel that they're quite a bit warmer when they're around the area of the sun. You know, the bits of road and trees catching a little bit of the warmth of the last rays of the day. And that's what I'm trying to put in here. I don't want to put in too much information. I want enough detail to qualify the landscape as a landscape, and so it supports the sky above it. That's the whole idea. But in doing so, I didn't want to put in just a very dark silhouette of the landscape. That really doesn't work at all. So I wanted to put in some warm values just to make it look a little bit more, and to sort of qualify it and make it a bit more realistic when it comes to accompanying a beautiful sky above it. Okay, so for a lovely little study, this has worked extremely well. I've really enjoyed the process. And as I said earlier, there is no reference for this week. It is merely something from my head. And if you go out and observe skies and sunsets long enough and paint them long enough, you will be able to just create one of your own. But even if you're working from photographs, just bear in mind the fact that the camera cannot distinguish in some of the darks and extremes of color. So it's well worth sort of thinking about that when you're moving forward. Anyway, enough is enough. I'm going to sign this one. I'm going to let it dry off and get set up for the new painting. And I look forward to your company in a fortnight with something fresh on the easel. Take care for now. Bye-bye. Okay, everybody, I had a lot of fun doing that. I do hope you enjoyed that process of that little sunset as well. Now, the thing is, if you did, why not consider subscribing to the channel? It is a very young channel and needs all the help that it can get right now. So it doesn't cost you anything to do that, but it really does help the channel grow and reach a much wider audience. And at the same time, why don't you click the bell icon and the notification tab? It tells you each and every time I upload a new video to this channel, and that is at the moment every fortnight, with of course the intervening weeks I add a new video to my watercolor channel. So if you like watercolors too, why don't you check that channel out as well? And if you're a subscriber to either or both, that would be fantastic, and it really does help the channels, as I say. Now, on top of that, there is also my Patreon. Now, my Patreon is growing, but there is a dedicated tier purely for you guys who love oils. Why don't you go over there and check it out? It costs you nothing to do that, but if you want to get involved, I'd love to welcome you as my latest patron on that tier, or best of both tier if you fancy seeing the watercolor content as well. But there's a lot on offer, and it's being added to each and every month, so check it out. And I'd like to say hi there. Okay, so I'm going to get ready for the next video, and it will be out a fortnight from now. But if you are wanting a little bit more and don't mind watercolors, then check out the other channel next week, because there'll be a new video there as well. In the meantime, wherever you are, take care, stay safe, enjoy your painting. All the best for now. Bye-bye.